What up, Rinku Army and MLW fans? I am Marie Shadows, and thank you for tuning into a brand new episode of the Square Circle podcast. I am covering MLW now, so you guys will be getting that on the Square Circle podcast. And some more interesting opportunities are coming up for your girl, Marie Shadows. If you haven't heard by now, I have been all over the news. The dirt sheets have picked me up because of my WWE story of what I dealt with the first month. I was there as the WWE Network logger. If you guys want to go back in my catalog of podcasts, I do have some more WWE stories. So let me just run everything down. So Sunday, I started with Perched on the Top Rope. They are lovely guys. Go give them a follow. Go give them a subscribe on their own podcast. Perched on the Top Rope allowed me to have a platform to tell about my WWE days, as well as being a really good co-host. And I'm going to be joining them this Saturday again, just to talk about more WWE stuff and just go over professional wrestling. On Monday, I was a guest on According to Woods. And Woods is such an amazing podcast host that I had an enjoyment being on his podcast and talking about various topics in wrestling and pop culture. It wasn't just linear about my experience in WWE, but everything that relates to wrestling in general. And I was really happy that I was on his podcast. You guys should definitely give it a listen. It's definitely on YouTube, and you can definitely follow him at According to Woods. On Tuesday is where I feel like I made it. I was a guest on Thomas Island, and that is a huge honor for me to be on Thomas Island with co-host Ross. Ross is an amazing co-host. I really do enjoy his work, and I also enjoy him being the co-host on Thomas Island. If you guys are not following Ross, make sure to follow him at Ross W. Berman IV on Twitter. And then obviously Tamatonga is the most amazing person to ever interact with. And I am just humbled to be on there. And we were there talking about wrestling, Dark Side of the Ring, NXT 2.0, AEW news, and even New Japan Pro Wrestling news, especially with the G1. And now that it changed a little bit because of Naito and his knee, I'll get into that into a separate podcast episode, but we covered that. And then we also covered a little bit of my WWE days on Thomas Island, especially that Bullet Club incident that I had at WWE. You guys shouldn't miss that episode. You guys should definitely check it out. Tonight, Wednesday, September 22nd, I will be on the Roundtable Pro Wrestling podcast. We're going to be talking about the Dark Side of the Ring and maybe get into some WWE stuff. Who knows? Just make sure to tune in later on tonight on YouTube for that, which would be great. So that has been my week in professional wrestling, being on multiple podcasts, talking about WWE, talking about wrestling. I love wrestling, and this isn't a front for anybody that thinks that it is. I love wrestling through and through, and it is my everything. So because it is my everything, let's jump into MLW, because that is why we're here. But I just want to give you an update just because I haven't put out much content. I've been on other people's amazing podcasts, and I love doing podcasts with them, but I don't have much content up now. But this is going to be new. I will be reviewing MLW to the best of my ability, and I hope you guys enjoy. And of course, if you guys enjoy, patreon.com/Marie Shadows, because together we're making wrestling memories. So let me dive right into the brand new episode of MLW that's debuting tonight at 7 p.m. on the YouTube channel. They have come back in full force. It is MLW Fusion Alpha. We are greeted with Cesar Duran, who makes the matches for MLW and definitely tells you the story and catches you up on everything, which I totally appreciate. So he runs down the match card. We are going to start off with a Bunkhouse Brawl that has the Von Erichs versus Team Filthy. The second match is going to be KC Navarro versus Gino Medina. And then the third one is going to be a returning Davey Richards making his MLW debut at Alpha versus TJP. Let's start with the Bunkhouse Brawl. Team Filthy, which is Tom Lawlor, Kevin Koo, and Kit Osborne, all come out and Tom is doing a promo inside the ring and definitely getting that cheap heat from the Philadelphia crowd. Tom is definitely enthusiastic to be back in front of fans. They've had a back and forth confrontation between themselves and the Von Erichs for over a year, where friendships got twisted and people turned on each other. And this is why we're here now, to have these two fight in a bunkhouse brawl. So after the promo, we get the Von Erichs to come out. Ross and Marshall Von Erichs are going to be the chosen ones to fight in this match against Kevin Koo and Kit Osborne. Tom Lawlor is on the outside, being an onlooker. So here are some highlights from the match. We had Kevin Koo taking the shovel straight to Ross Von Erich, even putting the point of the shovel directly on the back of the neck of Ross. That looks so gruesome. And I think that's what makes Kevin Koo part of Team Filthy, that you really do have to be a scumbag in order to do that. He could have decapitated Ross at that moment, but he didn't do that. Thankfully, he didn't do that, I should add. Team Filthy as a whole has been focusing on the knee of Marshall Von Erich, and knee problems are nothing to really mess with. Kit Osborne encourages Kevin Koo to use the shovel on Marshall Von Erich's knee. And then Tom gets up to the apron. He has a 2x4 in his hand, and he wants to hit one of the Von Erichs over the head. Kevin Koo is holding Ross hostage, and as he's pushing Ross towards Tom, in order for Tom to get this shot in, Ross escapes the grip of Kevin Koo, and bam, Tom Lawlor whacks Kevin Koo over the head and breaks the 2x4. This allows the Von Erichs to get a little bit of an advantage here as Kevin Koo is knocked out. And then the Von Erichs set up a plank of wood between two chairs. Kevin Koo is laying underneath it, and they put Kit Osborne on top of the plank of wood. And then Marshall Von Erich, with no fear, goes up to the top rope and does a beautiful moonsault. And when you watch the moonsault, it looks like time has stopped. So he does a beautiful moonsault and goes through both men, even breaking that plank of wood. And then Ross goes over to cover the opponent, and thus the Von Erichs win their bunkhouse match and now is afforded a tag team title shot. Next, we get a TJP promo. TJP's promo skills are very interesting, and you can tell that he has his own sense of humor. It's laced within his words and how he says things and his body language whenever he talks about his other opponents. And I totally get it. He's a heel. He's okay with promos. He definitely dragged me in, and I was hyped for the main event, which is going to be TJP versus Davey Richards. So yeah, I think that he has a sense of humor that only he understands, because everyone else gives him grief on Twitter. Aside from the promo, we go into our second match, which is Casey Navarro versus Gino Medina. Casey Navarro is 22 years old, and he's making his MLW debut in this match. And he is one hell of a firecracker. Both him and Gino were evenly matched and also fast paced. Like, do not take your eyes off of them. This is strictly a lucha libre style match where both guys knew each other's counters and both guys kind of want to one up the other, to the point where Casey Navarro hit Gino Medina with a huge DDT. Even with all of Casey Navarro's offense on Gino Medina manages to pick up the victory in this match with a hellacious finisher towards the end. In our main event, TJP versus Davey Richards. I, for one, am happy that Davey Richards is back in wrestling. I supported him in Ring of Honor, TNA, and I bought the first ever original American Wolves t-shirt. So yeah, it's been that long, and I'm happy that he's back in professional wrestling. Welcome back, Davey Richards. Davey Richards also had a compelling promo before this match, and he basically told it as it is, and that TJP did at one point train Davey Richards while they were at the dojo in Japan. However, it is Davey's job to now beat the teacher. And it was an amazing promo that gripped me further and got me more invested into this main event match. The main event match definitely started off with hold for hold. These guys know each other like the back of their hand. They've wrestled many times. So they're definitely going to go hold for hold and be evenly matched in that aspect. TJP is definitely an all-around competitor, no matter how you look at it. TJP can definitely do the flashy stuff and can definitely do the ground stuff. But Davey Richards has studied that grittiness that he always had in his whole entire career for what he does in the ring. And he does it very meticulously, too. Here are some of the highlights during that main event. Davey does a superplex on TJP. Davey then tries to go for an ankle lock, but TJP escapes this ankle lock, only for Davey Richards to punt kick TJP right in the chest. Davey does not waste his next motion and goes in for a cover. However, TJP kicks out at 2. And then both of them are on the apron, which is a very tricky situation. But that does not stop Davey Richards from doing an exploder-like brainbuster onto TJP, onto the hardest part of the ring, that apron. So TJP's back was killing him after that move. Now we get down to the final moments of this match, and it felt like an urgency in order to make a move and definitely get the 1, 2, 3. Davey Richards goes for a double stomp. And then a brainbuster, goes for the cover. TJP kicks out and reverses that kick out into an ankle lock. And that is when TJP taps to Davey Richards. Davey Richards wins his first match in MLW on his debut showing. And ladies and gentlemen, that is all for MLW 9/22/21 show. MLW Fusion Alpha, that you guys will be seeing at 7 p.m. on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube of MLW. Make sure to follow all their social medias, and also make sure to just support them because it is definitely a combative sport. And I enjoyed all 3 of the matches. They really do have a good roster with really good talent. And yeah, support them. And don't forget that you can get your tickets for MLW that's coming to Philly, the 2300 Arena, for Fightland on October 2nd. And then a special 1 hour will be given to Vice TV October 2nd, where you can see the main event that has Alex Hammerstone versus Jacob Fatu in a title versus title match. If you guys enjoyed my MLW review, then please consider supporting the Square Circle Podcast. Here are the ways that you could definitely do that. The Square Circle Podcast is an audio podcast and also a video podcast as well. For all audio, head over to anchor.fm/Square Circle Podcast. And via Anchor, if you want to leave your opinion, all you have to do is just hit that voice message button, leave your thoughts, and I'll definitely get back to it. If you love Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, the good thing about anchor.fm/Square Circle Podcast is that it gets distributed to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts, to Google Podcasts, and everywhere else. If you want the video format of this MLW review, then head over to youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to never miss a notification. Also on the YouTube side, I do practice my wrestling commentary, so support me in that aspect as well. And if you want to take it a step further, I do have a Patreon where all of this takes time and effort, and together we are making wrestling memories last forever, right? So head over to patreon.com/Marie Shadows. Not only will you get MLW reviews, AEW reviews, New Japan Pro Wrestling and G1 reviews, and Impact Wrestling reviews. You will also get articles written by me because I am a writer. You will also be part of the YouTube live streams when I go live, or whenever I go live walking outside, because walking is going to be part of this lifestyle, fitness and all of that. You could also join in on Twitter Spaces. And speaking of Twitter, if you're not following me on Twitter to discuss everything wrestling or just to see what I'm doing, follow me at Marie_Shadows. Oh, and guess what? I do have a TikTok now. You can just follow me at TikTok at Marie_Shadows as well. So support however you want. Make sure to share, tell a friend. And I really do appreciate you guys listening to these podcast episodes and how you consume it. I love professional wrestling. This is my bread and butter. And this is what I am most passionate about. Talking about professional wrestling, giving you guys my insights and my suggestions on how things maybe can improve if they need to improve. But so far, MLW has knocked it out of the park with their debut episode of MLW Fusion Alpha. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to an episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I'll see you guys in the next one.